sir, Paul, so we'll go ahead. Ready? Everyone on? All right, at this time, I'd like to call to order Genoa Township Board of Trustees zoning meeting. It is November 18th, 2021, and the time is 6:30 p.m. Roll call?
Roll call, Ms. Goodman.
Here.
Ms. Vaughn.
Here.
Mr. Gebhardt.
Here. All are present. In addition, we have Pat Myers, Fiscal Officer, Joe Schaefer, Director of Development and Zoning, and Paul Benson, Deputy Zoning Inspector. This meeting of the Genoa Township Trustees will be recorded. The meeting audio and written minutes will be available on Genoa Township's website at www.genoatwp.com or by contacting Genoa's fiscal office. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and there is no yielding of time. This is case number ZC 2021-03 Jc Manning zoning map amendment, aka rezoning, and preliminary development plan. The meeting has been called to order, and at this time I will read the legal notice. Maxtown Property 169 LLC requesting approval of a rezoning and preliminary development plan to construct a retail business on approximately 0.862 acres at parcel number 31734105003000, a vacant lot currently zoned rural residential, RR, seeking rezoning to Planned Commercial District, PCD, zoning case number 2021-03. The legal notice for this meeting was printed and published on November 3rd, 2021 in the Delaware Gazette and posted at the Genoa Township Hall on November 1, 2021. An attempt to send notice of this meeting to adjacent property owners was also made. The following were marked Exhibits A through M. Exhibit A, legal notice. Exhibit B, affidavit of advertisement. Exhibit C, sign-in sheet. Exhibit D, application and plans originally received October 28, 2021. Exhibit E, Delaware County Regional Planning Commission recommendation made July 29, 2021. Exhibit F, City of Westerville curb cut approval dated June 28, 2021. Exhibit G, Fire Marshal letter dated June 28, 2021. Exhibit H, correspondence regarding Maxtown Road fire hydrant dated July 23rd and July 24th, 2021. Exhibit I, Delaware Public Health Lot Feasibility Letter dated August 31, 2021. Exhibit J, Trustee Acknowledgement of Zoning Commission's recommendation made on October 7th, 2021. Exhibit K, Staff Technical Memo dated November 12th, 2021 for November 18th, 2021. Exhibit L, Staff Technical Review dated November 12th, 2021 for November 18th, 2021. Exhibit M, all public comments received between October 28th, 2021 and November 18th, 2021. At this time, anyone who wishes to speak during this proceedings, would you please stand and raise your right hand so I can swear you in? That also includes public comment. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Very good. You are now legally sworn in. At this time, I will turn the meeting over for the staff report by Joe Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to make a couple of points of clarification regarding the exhibits. We had a couple things I just need to clear up. The application for this proposal was originally submitted on July 6, 2021. It's the current iteration of revisions that's dated October 28, 2021. And then also the staff memos and tech reviews are actually dated November 9th, 2021 for November 18th, 2021. So very minor in the grand scheme of things, but just want to clarify those items for the record. So moving on to the report, I'm just going to dive right in. Here you have before you Maxtown Property 169 LLC is seeking rezoning and preliminary development plan approval to construct an approximately 5,000 square foot retail/office/service business with associated warehouse building on approximately 0.862 acres prior to right-of-way annexation on an unaddressed parcel of land located on the north side of Maxtown Road between 6463 Maxtown Road and 7194 Hillmar Drive. The post-annexation size of the parcel will be approximately 0.829 acres. As far as staff is aware, this parcel has always been vacant. The current property owner purchased it in September of 2019. The proposed building and parking lot have been placed towards the southwest corner of the property to move them as far away from residential properties to the north and east about as practically possible. And the parking spaces have similarly been oriented in such a manner that headlights will not shine towards any residential property when vehicles are parked within said spaces. So Paul, could you bring up the site plan real quick, just so they have a frame of reference on the screens? There, so he's going to pull it up just so you have an idea of better understanding of what I'm talking about, so you can visualize it there. In terms of the surroundings of the properties immediately to the east and north are zoned planned residential district and contain single-family dwellings. The property to the west at 6463 Maxtown Road is currently zoned residential. However, it was sold this past April. The new property owner has indicated to staff that they may seek to convert their property to commercial use in the future and have provided a letter supporting this application this evening. However, no applications for 6463 Maxtown have been submitted for the property as of this report. I should note the 2019 comprehensive plan map does recommend the neighboring property to the west at 6463 Maxtown for future commercial use. The properties to the south across Maxtown Road is located within the city of Westerville. They are used as industrial property. You may know it as the Sonova business, and appears to be zoned industrial per Westerville zoning map. I didn't see a date on said zoning map, but it was posted on their website and referenced by staff on November 2nd, 2021. All of their not already mentioned properties west of the subject parcel on either side of Maxtown Road to State Route 3 are non-residential in nature, either in terms of zoning and or existing land use. Access and traffic. The development would be accessed via a new driveway onto Maxtown Road. As this portion of Maxtown Road is owned and maintained by the city of Westerville, the city has final say regarding access to it. The city has informed the applicant that the drive approach will have to be shared with the parcel to the west, that being 6463 Maxtown, and that a private access easement agreement be recorded to allow said property to utilize the driveway. The city is also requiring this configuration to limit the number of curb cuts onto Maxtown Road. So essentially what the city is doing, I'm going to go off script here momentarily, is the property immediately to the west currently has a residential driveway there for the house that's already there. Basically what the city is saying is that if that property does develop, we don't want them to have another commercial driveway cut onto Maxtown on that property to the west. We want them to share driveways with the driveway being proposed this evening. So the applicant has been asked to provide an easement through their property over to the property to the west. So if the property to the west develops, the users would utilize this driveway. The city of Westerville is requiring that additional land be dedicated for the Maxtown Road right-of-way, and that said land will have to be annexed from the front of the subject lot. The annexation will have to match the right-of-way in front of Harris Automotive to the west, which is located at 6319 Maxtown Road, and this annexation has been accounted for on the plan drawings. The city of Westerville has also advised the applicant to plan on providing a 10-foot wide sidewalk / bike path area within, I believe, the right-of-way. Again, that is Westerville's jurisdiction regarding that matter. Westerville is also requiring that a trip generation report for the development, a copy of which should be provided to the township, along with Westerville's approval of said report prior to any final development plans. Since this portion of Maxtown is, as noted, maintained by Westerville and not Delaware County or Genoa Township, the county cannot require a traffic study be submitted to them. The zoning resolution only requires a traffic study be submitted in an application when required by Delaware County. Since the county cannot require one, such a study does not have to be included in the submission, unless otherwise expressly requested by the township. Since Westerville will be handling traffic matters and is requiring a trip generation report, as noted, staff doesn't believe any further studies are really needed here. Regarding stormwater management will be provided via a single stormwater basin located immediately east of the proposed building. The system is proposed to ultimately drain into an existing stormwater system in the Maxtown Road right-of-way. Approval of the stormwater management system will be ultimately fall under the jurisdiction of the engineers for Delaware County and or the city of Westerville, depending on whose infrastructure is being utilized. Obviously, the stormwater basin itself is in township land, so that sort of falls under Delaware County, but if they're emptying into infrastructure in the Maxtown Road right-of-way that the city controls, they may have some say on that matter as well. Regarding utilities, the applicant has provided letters verifying that water, sewer, electric, natural gas, and waste services are available. Final approvals for such connections are not required at this stage of the process. Section 2703.02.e of the Township zoning resolution only requires that said letters confirm the availability of services. And that point is really important here as I get into the next section, dive a little bit more in depth on the sewer and septic issues. So there's two routes really that the applicant can go, whether they tap into public sewer or whether they just provide an on-site septic system. So as noted, sanitary sewer could be provided by tapping into an existing line at the southeast corner of Hillmar Drive and Oak Shadow Drive, which is northeast of this site. This has been verified by Delaware County Regional Sewer District. A work on the right-of-way permit would likely be required from the Township's Maintenance Department for any work performed in the Township's right-of-way. An existing 20-foot wide easement between 7156 and 7166 Hillmar Drive would also need to be utilized. Said easement was established when Northern Lake Section 1 was originally platted and recorded on October 23rd of 1991. The site plan also indicates a lift station may need to be built on site depending on the construction method of the connection. The Delaware County Regional Sewer District has final say regarding sewer installation projects and most likely also retains the rights to the aforementioned easement. Regarding the easement, the exact verbiage from the relevant portions of the note on the recorded plat for Northern Lake Section 1 reads, and I quote, "Easements are reserved in, over, and under areas designated on this plat as easement or drainage easement for the construction, operation, and maintenance of all public and quasi-public utilities above and beneath the surface of the ground, and where necessary are for the construction, operation, and maintenance of service connections to all adjacent lots and lands and for stormwater drainage," end quote. The applicant is also considering private septic system and has provided documentation from the Delaware Public Health District that is feasible at this location. While the zoning resolution does permit other sewage treatment options approved in the development plan, the township has generally only approved planned development serviced by sanitary sewer. That said, this is probably only due to the fact that most rezonings in the township, which we review, are for rezoning to planned residential district. The township's comp plan recommends connection to public sewer be required for PRDs. That recommendation does not exist for rezonings pertaining to PCD or PID. So in this case, PCD. There's nothing in the zoning resolution that requires a final decision on this matter be presented at this stage of the process. As noted in comment, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's IG1 or LG1. IG1, 1G1, I'm sorry. Above, the applicant only needs to demonstrate that the property can be serviced, which they have done. Final determination design should be incorporated into the final development plan submission package should this application be approved. Future development of this parcel, be it under the current residential zoning or under the proposed commercial zoning, will most likely require either the installation of a septic system or a public sanitary sewer connection. So again, to go off script, essentially what the applicant has testified, at least at the zoning commission level, I imagine it's going to be consistent here, is that they're hesitant to make a commitment in terms of the final connection because they still have to go through final engineering review with the county and or Westerville, and they don't want to commit to something at this stage and then get to the engineering review and realize for some engineering reason they've got to change course and do a different connection type, and then they don't want to feel like they're doing some sort of bait and switch on you. So obviously the alternative route then is to say, well, we could do either. We're going to wait to see sort of what the final engineering hashes out, make sure there's no surprises there before we make our final decision. I'm sure they'll be able to speak more to that issue tonight, but I'm just reciting the testimony that was previously given to the zoning commission. Moving on to parking on the site, the applicant provided a square footage breakdown of how the building is utilized, which demonstrates that the number of parking spaces provided in the proposal is compliant. Proposed drive aisle widths have also been revised to a code compliant 25 feet. The original iteration had a bit of a compliance issue. I think they were only 24. They've since revised them to 25. Regarding landscaping, the proposed design provides for a 67-foot green space buffer for the properties to the north and an approximately 47-foot green space buffer to the properties to the east. And we're going to get more into that in the divergence review in just a moment. The zoning resolution requires that a visual and mechanical barrier at least 5.5 feet in height be provided along the eastern, northern, and western borders as they are all adjacent to residential or plain residential zone properties. The plan would retain 6 existing trees along the site's eastern border and add 13 new evergreen plantings in said area. The plan would also retain 3 existing trees in the vicinity of the site's northern border and add 10 new evergreen tree plantings in said area. Then a mix of white vinyl privacy fencing with a height of approximately 6 feet and 9 evergreen trees will be provided along the site's western border. Similar fencing has also been proposed along the entirety of the northern end of the western parking lot and around the proposed southward-facing dumpster. So if you look at the northwest corner of the proposed building, you'll see sort of a line with some dots coming into it running westward from that corner. That's the privacy fence that they're proposing to screen that portion of the parking lot from the adjacent properties. The front parking lot will be screened from Maxtown Road via a 3-foot mound planted with 2 plus foot evergreen shrubs on top. This design complies with the requirements of the zoning resolution. Regarding lot coverage, has been computed accurately using the post-annexation acreage figure. The proposed 41.9% lot coverage figure is compliant with zoning requirements. Regarding lighting, a conceptual lighting plan demonstrating general compliance has been provided. The proposed parking lot will be lit via spillover building mounted lighting. This design adheres to the spirit and intent of the zoning resolution and eliminates the need for any standalone parking lot lighting fixtures. Regarding signage, the applicants opted to not propose any signage at this time, noting that they will likely propose signage as part of the final development plan application should this rezoning request be approved. Staff doesn't have any concerns with this approach. We can very easily review that at final. Moving on to the divergences. There are, I believe, 4 here listed. Number 1 is a divergence from section 120301, which requires only parcels 5 acres in size or adjacent to other parcels zoned planned commercial district or under application for rezoning to PCD that collectively sum 5 acres or more shall be considered for PCD zoning. The applicant is requesting to rezone an approximately 0.862 acre parcel not located contiguous to any properties which are zoned PCD, nor actively being sought for rezoning to PCD. So essentially, this parcel is much smaller than the size required by the zoning resolution for rezoning to PCD, hence the divergence. The second divergence is a request related to section 120303 in its entirety, which would be 120303 through 120303.b, which requires a 75-foot grass or landscape buffer along lot lines adjacent to residential or planned residential district properties, and that a visual and mechanical barrier in accordance with section 2003 be provided 75 feet or more away from said lot lines. Again, that's being requested. The applicant is proposing a 47-foot buffer from the homes to the east, a 67-foot buffer from the homes to the north, an 8-foot buffer from the home to the west, and a 15-foot front yard setback. The applicant will also plant 13 additional evergreen trees along the eastern border to supplement the 6 existing trees in this vicinity, totaling 19 trees. They will plant 10 additional evergreen trees along the site's northern border to supplement the 3 existing trees in the rear setback area, for a total of 13, and 9 evergreen trees along the western property line. A divergence from section 120309C, which requires parking lots on lots adjacent to residential or planned residential districts be set back 75 feet from the street right-of-way has been requested. Again, the applicant is proposing a 15-foot setback. And then the final divergence listed here is a divergence from section 120801, which requires buildings to be placed no closer than 100 feet to any district boundary line or street right-of-way. The applicant is proposing to place the building no closer than 47 feet to the adjacent lot lines. The exact building setbacks are 69 feet from the front lot line, 67 feet from the rear lot line, 47 feet to the side east lot line, and 54 feet from the side west lot line. So essentially what you have going on here is this is an existing parcel, very small, just hard to comply with all the PCD zoning restrictions on a lot this small, because obviously the restrictions were, as you saw, really written and intended for lots that are 5+ acres in size, and here we're dealing with a lot that's less than 1 acre in size. So that's what's really driving a lot of these divergences, is even what I would consider a relatively modest sized building at 5,000 square feet has trouble fitting itself and the required number of parking spaces on here, because it's just a smaller lot. Moving on into the staff commentary. The 2019 comprehensive plan recommends planned commercial utilization of this property. as referenced in Chapter 4, Planning Area 6 recommendations of said plan, and as well as on the comprehensive plan map, with, quote, significant visual screening and noise barriers for the single-family homes to the north, end quote. This specific recommendation dates back to the 2008 comprehensive plan. Also noting a similar recommendation exists in the 1999 comprehensive plan, which noted that the properties on Maxtown Road will develop in a manner similar to the existing commercial industrial development of that time within that vicinity, and stated, quote, further encroachment of residential development into this area should be discouraged. So going off script, essentially the thought of this stretch, these areas, this property going commercial has been in the township's comprehensive plan in some form or another since 1999, possibly even earlier, because I know there was a couple of failed comp plan attempts before 99, but the first official record of it, of that recommendation, appears in the 99 comp plan. Delaware County Regional Planning Commission recommended conditional approval of the application, with the condition being additional screening of the neighboring residential properties. The plantings that have been added to the plan since that recommendation was offered by DCRPC, and the revisions previously submitted on August 16, 2021 to the Zoning Commission seemingly addressed that recommendation. So a prior iteration of this plan was a lot more sparse in terms of the screening and buffering to the neighboring properties. After DCRPC made that recommendation and the Zoning Commission had their first meeting, the applicant went back to the drawing board and beefed up the buffer landscaping and all those areas that I just described. The Genoa Township Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the subject application, including the requested divergences and preliminary development plan, during the regular meeting on October 12th, 2021. Staff's technical review is attached to this memorandum. I'll touch on that briefly here in a moment. The following recommendations are being made by staff but are not zoning requirements. One, providing raised landscape parking island end cap at the western end of the front parking road to better separate vehicles and to help better distinguish where designated parking areas and drive aisles are located when covered with snow. Note, the applicant has thus far opted to not implement this recommendation, and the Zoning Commission didn't really pick up on it either, so I'm just sort of noting it, really, I guess, just for the record that I did recommend it, but it never really got traction with the Zoning Commission, so the board can do with that as it sees fit. Second recommendation is providing a turnaround of some sort at the eastern end of the front parking road to allow for safer and more convenient movement of vehicles that may get to the end of the row and realize there are no parking spaces available. Again, the applicant at this point has opted not to implement that recommendation, nor did the Zoning Commission really push the issue. Third recommendation, if the city of Westerville is requiring a multi-use path across the site's frontage, staff recommends the applicant provide a sidewalk connecting said path to the front door of the building to allow for pedestrian access to the building. While this use may not generate a lot of pedestrian traffic should the current business leave, it could be replaced with a commercial use that is conducive to pedestrian access. Again, at this time, it's not been implemented. That might be one of those things that we have a better idea of once Westerville gets their hands on it and does the engineering review, and we see whether or not they're actually going to require that multi-use path. So that might be something that could be re-examined at the final development plan stage should we get to that point. Final recommendation by staff is adding shrubs at the eastern end of the front parking lot so that headlights from the vehicles driving down the drive aisle do not shine into residential properties to the east. This hasn't been implemented either. However, I will note that that original recommendation was written before the applicant went back to the drawing board and beefed up some of the landscaping in that area. Moving on, a concern about spot zoning was raised by a member of the public during one of the Zoning Commission's meetings about this application. I've included an excerpt from the 2017 version of the Ohio Planning and Zoning Law reference book I have in my office, authored by Meck and Perlman, regarding the topic of spot zoning. Please note that it's just an excerpt and containing non-legal opinions of the authors, and it is only intended to be informative. It's not considered legal advice. I'm going to spare everyone me reading it, unless the board wants me to read it line by line. It's 2 paragraphs long. But I did sort of capture my sort of interpretation of it or analysis of it in the following commentary that I'm going to go through here. So, as noted in above in this memo, rezoning the subject parcel would be, quote, in accordance with the comprehensive plan, which is a quote from the the Mecken-Perlman book that I just cited. It would also seem to be, quote, in furtherance of a general plan adopted for and it's designed to serve the best interests of the community as a whole, end quote. The granting of divergences for aspects of the proposal which are not compliant is lawful pursuant to Section 2707 of the Township Zoning Resolution, and that comes into play because the verbiage I referenced talks about lawful exercise of zoning. And then while properties to the east and north are admittedly zoned residential, properties at the south are zoned or planned to be zoned non-residential, either industrial or commercial. According to the Township's official zoning map, the Township's 2019 comprehensive plan map, and the City of Westerville zoning map that I previously referenced. The subject proposal would seemingly be consistent, relatively speaking, with other adjacent non-residential land uses which are either existing or planned in this area. These include Sonova and Cardinal Self-Storage to the south, and the two properties to the west, one of which is already zoned planned commercial district, which up until recently housed Superior Asphalt, but now has a construction business operating out of it. You may know it as the Hassey property. And also, as referenced, the property immediately to the west is currently zoned residential, but the comp plan shows as being recommended for future commercial use. Any revisions necessitated by the engineering reviews conducted by the county or Westerville can be addressed as part of the required final development plan submission, should we get to that point. And then also, should the application be approved, it shall only constitute approval of the rezoning request and preliminary development plan. As I've alluded to numerous times already, final development plan approval to Article 27 of the zoning resolution will have to be obtained from the Genoa Township prior to construction. Such approval would also be subject to the provisions of 2704.18 through 2704.23 of zoning resolution, which basically just is a lot of administrative regulations regarding how long the approval is good for, and the process of submitting the final, when the earliest that could be submitted, stuff like that. Moving on to the technical review. As you can see, most of the comments have really been struck out. The only comments that are open are just the notes about the 4 divergences that are being requested. And there's also some comments where, as we went through the process, it was determined that the information that was being asked for by staff is something that could be delayed until final development plan applications. So really, in regards to the development review or the technical review as a whole, staff, I don't believe, has any leftover outstanding comments of stuff that they feel like the applicant needs to address for at least compliance reasons at this stage in the game. Like I said, there's plenty still to do as part of the final application should we get there, but at this point, I think it's about as clean as we can expect it to be for a rezoning application. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, very good. Just to give a little bit of context to this evening, we've had a staff report. Next, we'll do the applicant's presentation. After that, there will be time for a public comment. And then, if you have any comments to make, if you don't, that's fine as well. We will then have if there are any public comments or any responses that are applicable by the applicant, then they will give them at that time. We will then go into a board discussion where we will discuss the application itself. We will review the divergences, and then at that time, we will go into any possible motions. So that just kind of puts things into perspective for how things are going to flow tonight. So at this time, we will have the applicant presentation.
So nice to be here. My name's Pat Mandrell. I own the Jc Manny Company, and this is my daughter, Joni Mandrell, who plans to take over. So, so my presentation is geared towards 4 questions that if I were you guys, I'd want to know from me. So that's how I kind of put my presentation together. So the first one is, who is Jc Manny? So just to let you know, and I think it's an important part, we're a local family business. The name of the company is actually named after the family. JC stands for our 2 kids, Joni and Chad. And Manny is a nickname off our last name, Mandrell. So I have been in business 26 years. The first 2, I started in the basement of my home, like all small little businesses, just to see if there was any traction. And then I relocated to the 169 North Otterbein address where we've been for the last 24 years at the same place, and we've rented at that location the whole time. So the owner of the building, I've asked several times to purchase the building, but it's a family building for him. He and his father built it, so there's some emotional ties there, and he wants to keep it in the family. So that's why we're looking elsewhere at this stage. So what does the Jc Manny Company do? We are imprinters of apparel. We buy all of our goods from local distributors and vendors throughout, well, the whole country, but mainly the Midwest. But lately, because of inventory, we've had to go out west to get a lot of our stuff because they're not stocking like they did before the COVID came in. So, but we screen print and we embroider. We do everything in-house. We have normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Right now, we're Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4, because we can't get the help we need to open that extra day up. So, but we've never gone past 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That's just our business model. As far as deliveries to the location, all we have is UPS. It comes once a day. Where we're at now, it usually delivers between 10 and noon. So one truck, FedEx comes maybe once a month, depending on the vendor we buy from, if they use that means of travel. But there's no semi-trucks that come into our business to drop stuff off, no big trucks or anything. It's really just a delivery truck, like I said, once a day from UPS. We have trash pickup twice a month, and they usually come in the morning. And we have the smallest dumpster that we can have. We really don't have a lot of trash. When we get boxes in with our garments, we imprint them and we put them back into the same boxes. So, you know, we try to stay eco-friendly there and use what we have. So, as far as our customer base, very local. Probably 80% of our customers are in the Westerville area. We do have customers in Columbus and New Albany and Dublin and Lewis Center, but our customer base is schools, you know, with 3 high schools here, going to be 5 middle schools, 15 elementary schools. You know, there's a lot of business for imprinted apparel, from sport teams to student council to drama to staff, everything. We also imprint locally, you know, all the city and local government, park and rec, all those guys. And then we also do some online stores for the schools. So Joni started that up, which was a God savings when we were shut down there for a little while. We were very grateful that we had the foresight to get into online stores. As far as employees, we usually are somewhere between 5 and 8. Our biggest time of the year is August and September for back to school. That's when we'll peak out at around 8 people. Joni is about the only full-time person, sometimes customer service, but we usually hire moms, to be honest with you, who have school-age kids and they want to be home by 3 or 4. So of the 7 employees we have right now, 5 of them live in Genoa Township. So we do hire local. I do want to say that. Everyone that we hire, and it's good for us because they know the schools, so when we're imprinting things, they know about Blendon, they know the school colors, they know everything that's going on. So that's been very helpful. So that's kind of a breakdown of our business. You're obviously welcome to ask any questions about that might come up. My second question that I'd be asking if I were you is, why do we want to relocate to this Maxtown property? So about 5 years ago, Joni came to her dad and I and said that she wanted to continue the business on. She had been with us at that stage, about 10, 11 years? Somewhere around there. And of course, her dad and I were thrilled. So The biggest concern as we talked about it and moved forward in that direction was that we felt like we needed a permanent home for the business because she plans on doing it for another 25 or so years. And we know at any time, you know, when you're renting, they can come and say, we've decided for you not to be there anymore. So anyway, so that's when we started looking for a more permanent place, if you will. So when we found this property, our realtor had mentioned that, you know, at some stage it was in the comprehensive plan for it to be commercial. So we called Joe up and he said that, yes, it started in 1999 and it's been reviewed in 2008, 2016, 2019, that it was still in the comprehensive plan. He said there is no guarantees that it will go that way, but just so you know, it's not like the conversation hasn't come up about the property. So my husband and I felt comfortable moving forward with that. So we purchased the property in 2019, and then, of course, with COVID, we didn't do anything. We wanted to make sure our business still had legs after that, which it does. So that's why we're moving forward now. So this property does check a lot of boxes for us personally from a standpoint. It's right in the hotbed of our customer base, so that's important. The lot size is exactly what we're in now. We're in a 5,000 square foot building that looks exactly almost what we're proposing. So we just want to go from there to here at this stage. So the exposure on the road is fantastic as far as Maxtown's concerned. And the other positive thing when we saw the property is Joni lives in the neighborhood. She lives in Orchard Lakes, which is directly behind the property. We kind of laughed one time. We looked up the property on Google Maps and looked up her house, and you literally could draw a line. It is directly behind our property. Of course, there's 2 courts and a field of trees in between, but it is her neighborhood, if you will. So the third question I'd be asking is, why is the Jc Manny Company the best business for this location in Genoa Township? And I think what we're proud of, it's a local business, and I think that's important. You know, we have our Home Depots and everything else around, but I think it's important, and I hope Genoa Township feels that way, that they support local businesses. And I'll be honest, the community supports us and we support the community. We donate whenever schools have big events. Anybody who has a big event, the 3 things they do is go on social media, buy signs, and buy t-shirts to advertise that. So it's not like it's a business that's going to come and go every year. We've always been amazed of how many t-shirts we put out a year, and every year people come back because their kids are on a new team. So we love what we do. I think we serve the community in that way as far as communicating messages and involvement that the kids have. So the other thing is we're not a startup business. We've been in business 26 years. It's not like we're going to come in and hopefully make this business fly. We've already proven that we can make it and support the community, and like I said, they've supported us. I think the other thing that's why we're good for this location, we're a low-impact development. We have low traffic. Like I said, at the most, we have 8, maybe 9 employees that will come. We pretty much production works 9 to 3. And we all stop work at noon. We sit down and have a family meal at the business, and then everybody goes back to work. They don't go in and out looking for drive-throughs, food, and all that. Pretty much everybody brings their lunch, and we just eat there. There's no odors, there's no noise, and we work regular business hours. There's not nights and weekends involved. So we think that's a plus for the community that we're going to be situated in. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about is what we're proposing for the site. So in January 2021, I went to the neighbors and took a letter, introduction letter, my business card, and the initial plot we had so that they knew what was coming. I invited them to my business. I invited them to call, and if they had any questions about what we did or who we were, I wanted them to feel comfortable with what was going in by them. And then in February, I had a Zoom meeting, because no one could meet. We had a Zoom meeting with the zoning board, and I showed them my initial plans. It was informal, just all I had was the plot layout. And they made some recommendations as far as staying away from the neighbors as much as we could, and also having as much green space as we could. So I visited the neighbors again in July of this year, took another letter, reintroducing myself and, telling them what's going on, that another meeting was coming up, that we were starting the zoning process. And I also presented them with the new plan. I think it was this one that's up on the board now as to what we were thinking. As you can see, we did a couple things from what the meeting in February. We did originally have a 6,000 square foot building. We moved it down to 5,000 square feet, which is what we're in now. We moved to the southwest corner of the property as far away from the neighbors as we could. We moved the parking lot. Initially, it was in the back and off to one side. And then the other thing we did when we made the building smaller, instead of being so wide, we originally had it 60 feet, we went down to 48 feet wide. Once again, trying to have that building fit on the property. So the building right now, as you see there, will have a single entrance from the Maxtown Road. It will have parking on the west side and the north side. There'll be 15 parking spaces that we have allotted, and that's plenty for the traffic. Most of our customers right now, to be honest with you, call in their orders because there's so many repeat orders, and we send them links to the different garments and all that. I mean, it used to be when we first started, people came in all the time, but really now it's kind of, to initiate orders, it's done pretty much email. They do come in and pick up their garments. So we probably have between, 3 to 5, it depends on the day, of people coming in to picking up their goods and stuff at the end of the day. So, and at lunchtime, it's a big time for teachers to come by if they ordered anything. So the parking lot lighting will be blade lighting on the front of the building, going out to the parking lot, and then there'll be 3 lights on the west side of the building where that parking lot is. They're all attached to the building and will shine down and will be to code as far as not seeing the lights, the bottom of the light fixtures, I should say. So the next thing to show you is the elevation of the building. It's 48 by 100 by 22 feet high. It has windows, like we said, on the one side and a double door in the back for deliveries of UPS. We'll go back there to deliver. And right by those double doors is where the trash area will be, and that will be all encased. And like I said, they only pick up the trash twice a month, and that is totally on the west side of the building, so it's away from the neighbors. I do want to say, let's see, Johnny, let's, go back one. So, we have neighbors on our east side and part of a property on the back side, the north side. On the west side is a house farther back. And I know it looks like our property is really close to theirs. I have talked to the gentleman twice, and you should have 2 letters in your packet that he has seen the plans, he approves of it, he doesn't have any problem with it. During public comment, during one of the zoning meetings, someone said, well, he's going to feel uncomfortable being between 2 commercial properties. And once again, I spoke to him about that. He submitted another letter saying he's aware he'll be in that situation, he doesn't have a problem with it. So I do want to make it clear, the neighbor on the west, is fine with, the situation, because it does look like we're really heavy on that west side of the property. So as far as the front of the building, we know where the transition property between commercial that goes down Maxtown to the homes. And Joni came up with a great idea, I think, of putting a front porch on this building. So it looks a little bit residential. We're kind of the transition property before it goes to residential. So, you know, we're trying to be neighbor-friendly that way and not put up some big modern whatever building. So I think it, you know, would fit into the neighborhood and, you know, have a nice blend to when it goes into the commercial or the residential area. So the last slide we have for you is the landscape that Joe went over a little bit with you. I feel like we're pretty, in pretty good shape as far as screening the neighbors from the building. There's some natural 20-foot high pine trees on the east side that are beautiful, that are staying, and a couple in the back, and then one right behind the building. When we first came, I wasn't sure what was allowed to be done zoning-wise, because we already have fence up on the north side and part of the east side, and I was told that that's their fence, that we have to have the barrier, and people didn't want fence on fence, so that's why we're doing trees. So all those trees will be 5.5 feet high, dense evergreens. And then the fence coming forward by the parking lot. Once again, sent this to the neighbor to the west side, so he has seen it too, and he has approved it. So just FYI on that. So that is my presentation. Hopefully I answered some of your questions. I'm sure you have more. But we're excited to come into Genoa Township and take care of the account base that we have now and protect that. We plan on being good neighbors, and Joni and I would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to questions during the board discussion.
Thanks.
At this time, we'll open it up for any public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would wish to speak, comment? And I believe you walked in just after we swore everyone in.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I'll swear you in if that's okay with you.
Swear me in.
All right, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You are sworn in.
Okay.
Name and address, please.
Sarah Hurt, 7166 Hillmar Drive. I would say that my property is probably going to be one of the most going to be convenienced. We actually have the easement on our property, so there's a lot of things that I still need to see about the easement and what rules or whatnot. There's a lot of red flags to me. Who is responsible if she's digging underground? Who's going to be responsible with tearing down my fence? I have dogs, I have kids. Like, is this a process where when you would think things are getting dug underneath the ground, it's going to be days where it's not going to, they take the fence down and it's done in a day. So who's going to be responsible for my inconvenience? And what if my dogs get loose? What if there's strangers in my backyard and my kids are home alone? I have a disabled daughter, so I also let everyone know if they're digging anything in the front in the sidewalk, there needs to be handicap accessible ability at all times because she's in a wheelchair. And then is there going to be a retention pond? And if there is, there should be a fence around it because kids can get in there and drown. All the trees that are getting put up, who is responsible for that? Because right now, if a tree falls on your house, it's an act of nature and it's your homeowner's insurance, you're responsible for that. So all these added trees, if a storm happens, is it going to fall on my fence? I'm responsible. Is she responsible? Who's responsible for that? You have anything else? I am not for it. It's not that it's her, I don't want anything about her business I have no issues with. It's just gonna lower the property of my house. I would have never bought the house if there was a building out back. If there's a lot of different strange cars, let's just say if she's not there past 5, there could be other cars. I'm gonna call Genoa Township because I don't feel safe, then Genoa Township police are gonna be coming out for no reason. Right now, it's a lot, no one is in there. The people that live west of her don't live there. I don't know if they plan on living there or not, but the only thing that I see is them outside, like having picnics in the yard. So they probably don't have as much as an issue as I have an issue. I just don't think it's gonna benefit the community. It's gonna benefit them, but the 3 people that live there, well, actually, it would be 4 houses, is gonna inconvenience them a lot. And I would just say, all of you guys, think if you guys live there and there was a field and someone coming and say, they're gonna tear down your fence, dig up your yard, do all this, how would you feel? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else for public comment? All right, at this time, we'll go into the applicant's response. Joe, anyone that would want to respond, as I understand it. And I know this, we'll probably get into a little bit of more discussion too. I know one of the issues that is yet to be resolved, and will be probably addressed in the final development plan, is the sewage issue.
Right.
Whether you do go with the on-site or whether you go with main. So could you maybe address that issue?
Sure.
Which would also address Ms. Hurt's concern a little bit?
So we bought the property and there's no sewage on it. So during my investigative work with it, seems like there's 3 ways to go. One is an open cut where you'd come from our property through the easement area, which is Sarah's property and her neighbor, across the street to where the manhole is. Can you get that computer back so I can show the slides and stuff? Yeah, there's,
So Paul's moving the little hand cursor to show where the manhole.
Right.
that they
Oh,
have
okay.
tied.
So that's,
Very good.
that's
So-
Hillmar, basically Hillmar Drive,
Yes,
north
yes.
of.
so.
Barn, I think that's Oak Shadow.
Yeah.
So after talking to Delaware County Sewage and Sewer Department and everything, I mean, nobody really wants to do an open cut and, of course, not cut through the street and everything else. So that leaves us with 2 other options. One is boring, which would start on my property, go underground through the easement area, under the street, over to the manhole again. The expense of that is very high, and there were like 3 pages of disclaimers when I got the quote, because you don't know what you're gonna run into and everything, and it doesn't, and they made it very clear, even though they're boring under, it doesn't mean that they might not have to go down if they hit something and they can't get through or whatever. So the problem with that, when I spoke with Delaware County, is a boring system's fine as long as you go 200 feet, but we're 300 feet away from the manhole sewer. So we need, some people call it a lift station or a grinder pump. So we're gonna need that on our property in order to, push the sludge through to the manhole. So that's what's going on there. And then the final thing, other option is an on-site. On-site, I had a soil sample person come out, and he submitted, it would go to the back of the property, the very north end. We know we have to be 10 feet away from the property line before they can start any on-site septic systems. But anyway, I had Larry come out, and he did a soil sample, which we had to submit to the, what was the name of those guys? Oh, Delaware County.
Regional planning?
Regional Health District, I think it is.
Oh, Health District.
So they could look at it. So when I submitted it to them, I had to submit a year of water bills. I had to submit the property, how many people work there, how many parking spaces, the soil sample and everything. So anyway, so they did send us a letter saying that it's a lot feasibility is what they approved, nothing more than that, that will go on there. I have a meeting on Saturday morning with a gentleman who would be, he's a septic designer. So now we need to go through those steps. But I guess all I had to prove was that we can get sewage there, which we did, either by boring or on-site system. So now Joni and I are going through the steps to see which is the best way to go. You know, both cost effectively and from a business standpoint, you know, and land and everything else. So, you know, until he does that study, you know, that's another roadblock, what Joe had talked about. You know, I have to see what obstacles I could be running into. Maybe that's not even an option, you know. But right now, Delaware County has approved 2 different ways to get sewer to the property, and I believe that's all I had to prove at this stage. So that's what we have done.
Okay. So, and Joe, maybe you could address this, realizing that you're not an attorney, but I know you have dealt with these kind of issues before, as we all sort of have. The responsibility to address Ms. Hurt's question regarding responsible. I mean, where does the liability lie if the fence is broken, if damages to another property, et cetera?
I really honestly don't have a great feel for that. We always warn people it's a possibility, but I don't know if I've actually had a scenario where it's happened and known what the result of it happening has been. I'd be shocked if the county doesn't have some sort of standards in place that they just don't leave it open cut ditch there. I mean, I'm sure they have to cover it. They probably have to seed it and throw some hay on it. These are guesses, but I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case, that they have to do some sort of basic replacement and try to get it back to as natural condition or pre-existing condition as possible. The fence is a bit of a wild card, because we always tell people when they put up fences across easements, like, just know that if someone ever has to come through there and do something, they could take it out and they may not necessarily have to replace it. So regarding liability, yeah, to me, that gets into an area that I think far exceeds my really expertise, or really township zoning law, really. I imagine the county has all sorts of answers for those questions on how those types of situations get handled and how they work with the property owners and the contractor and the person responsible for putting the line in.
Okay.
So sorry, I don't have a better answer.
No,
But
I mean, I don't want you to speculate. And,
yeah,
you know,
that's-
at the time, and again, one of the issues that we are going to have to deal with is, you know, you have met the requirement of being able to have sewage handled somehow.
Right.
It's just a matter of final development plan is probably when we're going to know
Right.
exactly what
Right.
that
and
is.
we are moving forward to get that information.
So-
too, depending on
It
what
could.
route they go.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we said from the beginning, it doesn't matter if this property's commercial or residential, sewer has to get there.
Sewer's
So,
going to have to be
yeah.
done, right. So one of her other questions, which was also kind of on my list, is the retention pond. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the retention pond? Is it a retention? Is it a detention? Is it
Yeah.
how deep,
So
et cetera?
the word I have heard the whole time I've been looking into this is retention. I don't know what that, you know, I know about that much, but I, like Sarah, went crazy. I called Delaware County and I said, there's no way a pond is going to go in the back of my property. I back up to residential. Kids are going to be in there. They're going to be wanting to swim or throw rocks or whatever. And I talked to 2 or 3 guys, and finally the last person said, well, it's not really a pond, it's a basin. And man, did that calm me down, because I, like Sarah, thought it was going to be 5 feet deep and everything else. And I went over to Harris Automotive, and they have a retention basin behind their property. And I mean, it's like a foot or 18 inches. And he said there's never been any water in it. So it kind of depends on where it's sitting. So I get where she's coming from. I addressed it myself. It's just a low, it's like a little gully, I guess you'd say, where water can sit for a while until it drains into the street. I have talked to Sands Decker a little bit after talking to the city of Westerville, and something else we might be looking at is more putting it on in the parking lot area instead of on the grass area. That they're seeing more and more of that, of retention areas in parking lots more so than in grass areas. So that's all
Well, according to, I mean, I still remember how to read a topo map. It appears that I mean, ironically, the top line is at the 934 foot. The bottom line is at the 932, which would indicate about a 2-foot depth.
Right.
The way that
Yeah.
looks, so.
Yeah.
And the retention, we have one of those in our subdivision. There's a dry retention area. There's a pond that is always full. When water becomes real
Right.
prevalent, it fills up, but then it drains into the pond and drains onto the
Right.
stream, so.
Yeah, this isn't supposed to be standing water as I
Right.
understand it. It's supposed to just be a holding tank and then it
A
goes down.
depression that
Yeah.
drains out. Okay, all right. I guess those were the 3 questions that were asked. The responsibility for the fence, I think we covered that a little bit during, if there is a fence on the easement, there may be an issue there because technically there shouldn't be a fence on the easement, but if there's any other damage done to the fence, that would have to be addressed during the construction phase.
Yeah, we'd have to, but remember, what we're talking about is boring. We're not really talking about,
Open
other than if
cuts.
there's a problem. I mean, they should be going down on my property and then shooting over, so.
Yeah, the borings, okay. Okay, well, at this time, let's go into the board discussion, since I've kind of already started that. But why don't we go ahead and with board discussion, and then we can go for there. We can ask questions, talk among ourselves, whatever's on your mind. Yeah, go ahead.
I've spoken to a few residents about this, so I'm just going to kind of go through some questions that they threw at me, plus some of my own. One resident reached out and is concerned if you happen to go septic system. What type of chemicals do you release through the air, through the septic, whatever, septic sewer? Or do you have toxic chemicals? Because I think T-shirt company, maybe you have some harsh chemicals.
We do have where we clean the screens, and we do use a chemical there. I sent that, I forgot to mention, to the Delaware General Health District, and they did recommend that we get, you have your septic tank is another tank that would only have those chemicals go in, and then that would be pumped out monthly, and it would be all EPA approved and everything. So, yes,
Very good.
so,
you're addressing that.
oh, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
Piggyback
Yeah,
on
go
that
ahead.
one, because I have
Go
the
ahead.
same question from a
Yep.
resident.
yeah.
Similar anyway. She was concerned about any fumes that might
Yeah,
come
we don't
out,
have any.
and it kind of piggybacks on the
Yeah.
septic
Yeah.
versus where these go.
Yeah.
So the inks and so forth, even though they may vent to the outside,
Yeah,
there's no odor.
nothing. Yeah, nothing. After we print, it goes through a dryer to cure the ink and stuff, but if we get anything, we have people come in and go, boy, it smells good in here. When we do have to wipe down some of the screens because it has this orange spray and stuff, but no, nothing goes outside or anything. Yeah, never. The nice thing is, what we're doing is just kind of transplanting ourselves. We're in a residential area now, so I think if there was any problems, people would have said stuff by now, so.
Good.
A couple clarifications, and I don't know who this question is geared towards, either or Joe or the applicant. If the property changes hands, I think this is more Joe, because this was another resident concern. What type of business could take over this facility with no new
Good question.
application?
Basically, any use that's listed as an authorized use by right for the PCD. I don't have the exhaustive list in front of me, but off the top of my head, any type of office, any type of retail, restaurant, like a medical research lab, medical facility, things of that nature. That may not be the entire list, but that's a lot of them. So, basically, if you look at Northgate Center, where Kroger is, and the businesses in that plaza, that's all PCD, so it's basically your main commercial district, so it's mostly those types of uses that are more geared towards the public coming on site and, buying or something or conducting business. There are things that could have a quasi, maybe industrial component to it, sort of like this does, but it's not the industrial zoning district. So the industrial zoning district is where the heaviest, dirtiest uses would be, only be permitted, and that's not this.
So that would be basically like Frost Road, I mean, back where.
Frost
Ohio
Road, some of the
Mulch.
properties west of here. If you go 2 more lots down, we're like Harris Automotive, J Company, the building with LA Cleaners in it,
Yeah,
North Gateway, a lot of that is plain industrial. We're fortunate that all those users, we've got users that aren't, big dirty industry users, like you would in some industrial districts, but theoretically, someone could go in that district.
I would have concerns too if it was me because of my age, but, this is going to be hers. So, she better be working for 25 more years. So, there's no plans to buy it and flip it. Let me make that very, very clear.
I did have some concerns with stormwater. It seems like that's already been addressed. Can you clarify, the city of Westerville is requiring at least an easement for a sidewalk or a bike path. Is that going to have to go in, or is it just?
I met with Rob a week ago Friday about that in the driveway. Westerville doesn't even have it on their budget plans for the next 5 years, but if they did anything, it could be a sidewalk or whatever. They haven't made any study where they're going to widen the road or anything like that. He said, there's nothing on the books.
So
right
you
now.
just have to provide the easement, but there's going to be
Right.
no path?
Right,
Okay.
right.
And if there was, Westerville will put it in?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. And then, sounds like with sewer, you're leaning towards either boring or having a septic
It's
system?
all there.
Not,
Unless,
yes.
open cut, I think, it's just, I don't think anybody wants it. So that's why we're leaning.
so
those
that would
two ways.
alleviate a lot of Sarah's concerns with tearing up her
Good.
issues,
Yeah.
let's hope.
Yeah.
The other issue is, which you brought up, if it's a home or a business, you're going to have to do one or the other. So
Right.
I don't know that that's a positive or a negative, it just is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't think I have anything else at this time.
Normally not. Connie, you have any questions?
I do, I have a few. Thankfully, trustee Vaughn got some of them.
Oh, good.
It's always good to be not first. Okay, I want to make sure that I understand a couple things. The annexation that the city of Westerville wants to, easement, annexation, whatever we're going to call this, it is basically the driveway into the property and then straight across for an easement for sidewalk. Am I correct on that?
You look,
The site's just frontage along Maxtown Road,
Okay,
so just cutting a little bit northward into the property.
okay.
And then the connection to the west would just be an easement, not part of the annexation. It would just be like a construction vehicular access easement, so cars could eventually go westward into the lot to the west. But the annexation itself is just widening the right-of-way of Maxtown Road. It's pretty common practice. We see the engineer's office do it here a lot with like subdivisions. A lot of times, the lots, especially older lots, are platted to the center line of the road. And a lot of times they'll ask that to be, the right-of-way to be formally dedicated whenever there's like a split or a subdivision. And also the county's road plan for the county also recommends widths, how wide the right-of-way should be for certain roadway types. And if they don't have that width there, when a subdivision comes through, they'll say, okay, well, we have 40 feet, we need 60 feet, you need to give us 20 feet of right-of-way. And then I believe they have the legal authority to do that, to force people into that. So, because we see them do that sometimes.
Sure.
Am I
I was
right?
more I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just more concerned because I didn't see anything in here that gave me specific depths, so many feet or whatever. And it talked about the property, and I thought, they're not taking the whole thing.
No.
No, they're not taking the whole thing, just a little bit of land, relatively small strip of
Strip,
land
okay.
parallel to the frontage, just to widen that section of
So
Maxtown
we're
Road.
clear on that.
So am I right where it's not colored in is really what the city of Westerville, quote, will own as far as right of way?
Yeah, I believe it showed up
kinda
on
like
one of the drawings,
Harris's.
because that was one of the things, when we were going through the zoning commission stage, there was some questions about the acreage and how the setbacks were being measured, because some of the setbacks in the original plan were being measured from the existing right-of-way line and not from what the new right-of-way line would be post-annexation. So we had to have them clean that up a little bit. So I'm trying to see here. Paul, is this drawing 2 of 3? Yeah. Are you able to zoom in on that, or is this the PowerPoint? I'm just going to actually, Paul's going to zoom in. I'm just going to walk up with the microphone. I'm going to point it out because it'll just be way easier that way. So can you zoom into the frontage here? So you can see here's the existing right-of-way line, and then here's the proposed right-of-way line. So it's about 10 feet. 10 feet straight across the entire frontage.
Got it. Thank you.
But if I could piggyback on, since you brought up the driveway, I'm still a little confused on the driveway. You're going to be putting in a driveway cut. But then it says, the city has informed that the drive approach will have to be shared with the parcel to the west. So,
Yeah, I can go up and,
yeah.
Probably just
because I
easier.
thought there was already a driveway to the parcel to the west.
Part 2 of mine, so
Yeah,
good job.
okay.
I'll come back up here to the map here. It's probably easier again for me to just point it out as soon as Mr. Benson zooms in here. Can you turn on the aerial, or yeah, there you go. So this is the site where the applicant is proposing the rezoning and the development,
Right.
the vacant parcel. The parcel to the west, the house sits way back from the road. They currently have a standard residential driveway, probably not even standard because it's been there for so long.
Gravel, yeah.
Yeah, it's not even paved, and the width would not meet commercial standard. So basically what they're saying is, when this property redevelops into commercial, they're gonna lose this driveway access totally. And Westerville is gonna say, to enter into this property, you're gonna have to turn into Ms. Mandrell's property, and then via a little service drive, get into this property. And that's all about, because Westerville's trying to eliminate the number of curb cuts onto Maxtown Road. The theory originally was for this whole area was for all 3 of these properties to go together and get like one singular
Yes.
development. But obviously, we can't control that. That was the ideal plan, but things sometimes play out differently.
Same things happen there. They put it in the
Yes, you
middle.
can see, that's a great point. Harris Automotive,
Yeah,
it looks a little different because of how the sites lay out, but it's the same exact thing.
I remember that discussion, but
Right.
I don't think, I can't remember, if there wasn't a driveway there originally, was there?
No,
So-
because that site had been vacant.
Right, so I remember the discussion about putting in one driveway, one for the current Harris and the other going to.
And then Mr. Harris has, over the years, talked about whether or not he's going to keep that section to the east and
Right.
expand upon it, or whether he was going to subdivide it off to someone else to develop. That's, obviously, nothing has happened there yet, but.
Okay, so that does clarify that. So there will only be one driveway for both properties.
This driveway would
if-
eventually serve this plus the property to the west, unless Westerville in the future would change its tune for some
Okay,
reason.
thank you. Go ahead, Connie, didn't mean to
No, that's fine.
sidetrack.
So I also saw mention in your memorandum, the property to the west, that may change from residential, that there's the potential of that happening?
Yeah, the new owner has contacted me and
Okay,
asked some questions about what that process would
Okay.
be. So they've expressed interest in doing something commercial
nothing
there themselves.
formal.
Nothing formal's been applied for, they could always decide not to do that. I'm just saying, yeah, they've asked the questions.
okay. Is regarding the tree screening. First off, whatever kind of evergreens you plant, make sure they're not Colorado blue spruce, because they're all dying.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
pick something that
Yeah,
lives.
yeah.
And the other question then, more for the zoning office, is there a replacement requirement should those trees die?
I know there is for the PRD. I'd have to double check the PCD verbiage to see if that's in there, but I think that's a good recommendation at final. If it's not, that we make a recommendation that be put in there. Generally, if they show a tree on a development plan like this, my expectation is there's always going to be a tree there. And if one dies, I'm going to say the zoning plan says there's supposed to be a good tree here, you need to replace it. So even if we didn't have that verbiage, I still think I could enforce the development plan, but it's never a bad idea to specifically codify that in the final development plan
Right.
text.
Right, because we've had issues with that in the past, and I'd kind of like to forego that issue. And then they also need to be of a substantial size.
Yeah.
Now, I also realize, you've got a tree that grows to 25, 30 feet.
Right.
You can't, it probably won't live anyway. but, not some 2-foot little
Oh,
line.
absolutely.
Okay. And then the other question was, you have 15 spaces, 1 handicapped, 5 to 8 employees. You said, maybe 3 people a day stop by. Are most of the things that they're carrying out, now you don't have a loading dock per se, you've
Yeah.
got double doors.
Yeah.
Most of the things they're carrying out, I
On a
get 12
dolly.
T-shirts, I carry them out, you
Well,
take them out in a
Yeah,
dolly.
12, but, people buy hundreds.
Sure,
So
sure.
we take them out on a dolly. And that's one of the things Joe wanted was that little island on the west side, and we're opposed to that because when you take the dolly out, you do put things in people's back seat, and then we're climbing over that bed to get in the back, to get in their back seat and stuff. So, but yeah, we use a dolly, that's all we use.
Okay,
We
I
don't
just
use
wanted
it.
to make sure that there was a
Right.
mechanism
Right.
to get whatever
Oh, yeah.
there,
Yep.
not everybody takes a little Kroger bag out.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, we have boxes. We have
Okay,
boxes.
very good. Let's see. I think that took all my questions.
Okay, I guess
You're it.
well, anything left is either very insignificant or stupid. I don't know which is right, but for me, it could be either one. I'd like to focus a little bit on some of the divergence.
Okay.
Since we do have, I believe, 4 divergence. Okay. The 5 acre requirement, do we have any parcels? I mean, are any parcels along there 5 acres?
Not in this immediate stretch. Once you get over towards Kroger Northgate,
Sure.
obviously,
Yeah.
yes. But, no, most of these, this is sub 1 acre. I can't remember the acreage of the property immediately to the west or the property that Mr. Hassey owns, but
It's not 5 acres.
I doubt
Yeah.
they're 5 acres.
Okay.
So I think that's why when you look all through these 3 parcels together, they may not even totally sum 5 acres, but it's pretty sizable little chunk. And like I said, with this being up against residential, I think the thought process was, instead of doing industrial here with being PRD butt up against it, non-residential makes the most sense, given that it's along Maxtown Road and being such a busy road, but doing commercial instead of industrial allowed for not quite as intense or dirty of uses as, and can provide for a little bit more of a, since we lack what I would call some communities have like a transitional zone where they allow sort of both residential and commercial, light commercial and some maybe more intense residential to provide that buffer, or do like multifamily in these scenarios, but we don't have those types of districts. So really the option here is to keep it straight residential or to allow it to go to commercial.
I mean, it is a significant divergent from the standard.
Yes, the number-wise, yes.
But again, if anything goes in there, you're going to be faced with the same issue.
Correct, and basically, that has been the story I've given everyone who's ever asked about this parcel in my time here, is that it's technically, number one, almost anyone who ever wanted to develop, I said, you're gonna at least have one divergence, because it's under 5 acres to rezone it to commercial. That, you can't get away from it, it is what it is. And I said, I've also always told people, you're gonna have at least 1 or more divergences related to setbacks, because you can even see it on the cover page of the submission. They did an exhibit, and I probably should have referenced it during my report. Mr. Benson's going to pull it up. You can see on the exhibit there, they drew the lot down there. Oh, he's trying to zoom into it right now. You can see they drew the lot and then drew all the different setbacks we have in there. And they didn't hatch out where the buildable area is, but I can tell you it's one of those small rectangle or squares right in the middle of the site there. So yeah, probably right about there would be my guess too. To fit a building and a parking lot, which not very big. So really, to do anything here that's not residential was probably going to require divergences. And over the years, I've always encouraged people, whatever you do here, you're probably going to need divergences. I'd rather see a divergence that shifts everything as far southwest as possible, even if it means getting the building and the parking lot closer to the road or even closer to that parcel to the west, because it gets it away from the PRD parcels to the east and to the north. So it's sort of a give and take type of thing. I just feel like if we think we want to see, if the board's inclined to do commercial here, I think you're gonna have to be willing to grant 1, if not more divergences, just because it's just the size of the parcel just dictates that.
So on that note, if this was a home, would it need any divergences, special considerations
It always depends on exactly, the size and scope of the home. I mean, the front yard setbacks, they wouldn't be dedicating right-of-way probably if it was just a house, but the front yard setback would be 75 feet. The rear would be 50, Paul, am I saying that right? And the side's 25? Yeah, so I think someone probably could make a house work here without necessarily needing variances. Whether it's a house anyone wants to build, don't know. Whether or not it leaves them the room for the accessory buildings and the pool. I mean, technically speaking, if a house were to go here, someone could put a pool or a relatively large accessory building up to 10 feet from the neighboring property line. So here we're getting 47 plus feet of buffer with all these trees and fencing, whereas a house could, I mean, we see some pretty large accessory buildings get built in Genoa Townships. I see accessory buildings that are probably almost bigger than my house get built sometimes in Genoa Township. So, not saying that that's what would happen here, but I just throw that out there that you could easily have a 20-plus foot building 10 feet off the property line here if someone wanted to put in a big standalone garage, as long as they can meet the lot coverage restrictions and the other requirements and not impede a septic system. Those are the alternatives that could go here. So could someone do it without variances? It's always hard to say without seeing a drawing. I think it's probably possible, but a lot of people don't tend to build very small houses in Genoa Township either. So usually when we see something, they're pretty big. I mean, 2,000 plus square feet is not abnormal at all.
One of the other things, though, that has come up consistently is the driveway, the shared driveway between the two properties. If that were a single-family home, if someone chose to build that there, how would Westerville deal with the driveway?
That's a good question. I don't know if they can force residential to share driveways or not. I don't know, because you start getting into city law and what the cities are allowed to do and all that. So I'm just not familiar enough with the power the city has in regards to those aspects and how they go about forcing that.
Well, and I think the other important thing is nobody's expressed interest in, that I'm aware of, in all the years I've been working with you on zoning and BZA, in putting a house there.
No, I can't recall anyone calling and saying, hey, I want to put a house on this
Yeah.
property. It's always been, hey, I want to do something
Kind of a busy
commercial.
street.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is, but to build a house here with your driveway coming off of Maxtown Road,
Anyway, sorry to.
No, that's right. So, the other divergence, setback of 75 feet from the street right-of-way has been requested. The applicant is proposing 15. Does that have anything to do with City of Westerville taking some
a
of that?
little bit, yeah. I mean, if they didn't take that 10 feet, their
Right.
setback, they'd be at 25 feet, so they'd still need this
Still be a divergent.
divergence. And candidly, some of those setbacks are written where we're envisioning that a property that's in a rural area is being developed into commercial. I wouldn't necessarily consider this portion of the township overtly rural. It's pretty suburbanized here. So I'm not sure it's a setback standard that even really makes sense in this area. And again, by having such a large setback in the front, you're pushing everything towards the north, towards the home. So to me, it's way more advantageous to reduce the front and get it as close to the road as possible. Obviously, I'm sure they would have maybe even tried to push it closer, but you still need to maintain sight distance and the area for the easement for the property to the west, which is probably why it's laid out the way it is.
Okay. I guess we are into divergence review. Maybe we can talk is there anything else anyone has relative to any questions or the divergence themselves?
I just have a couple notes here. While we're kind of comparing residential versus business at this location, if it was a resident, what lighting restrictions would they have?
None.
So
The
they could do
lighting
whatever they
restrictions-
wanted.
Yeah, the lighting restrictions in Article 21 don't apply to suburban and
Residential.
rural residential districts, so obviously someone put up something that was like a really major nuisance, perhaps the nuisance provisions of the revised code would come into play, but the zoning provisions don't apply to residential.
And then the trees, they wouldn't have buffer
yeah,
requirements.
nothing.
And the
There'd be-
existing trees that are near the fence would stay, and you would still have the issue of if a tree falls on my fence, who pays for it? Because there are
Correct.
currently
Yeah,
trees
correct. Or they
there.
could clear cut all the trees off the property.
Yeah, okay.
there's nothing from stopping like a rural residential homeowner from really doing that either, unless they were like in some sort of conservation easement or something, but, yes, the issue of the existing trees, or any even new trees being planted by this applicant or a homeowner on this property, yeah, that issue would still remain.
Okay, thank you.
Is it necessary, Joe, to talk about the diversion requests, shall demonstrate, et cetera, et cetera?
You can go through those standards. Those are just the standards for review of the divergences in the code. I always think it's a good idea to at least read through them, so the board's at least aware of them as you do your discussion, but it's up to you.
It may trigger a thought. Bear with me on reading this. Divergence request shall demonstrate how granting the request will advance public interest and general purposes of the zoning resolution by promoting or not having an adverse impact on one or more of the following purposes: the conservation, protection of natural resource, scenic areas, wildlife habitat, and historically unique natural features of the land, the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Genoa Township, quality of life within Genoa Township through the protection of the total environment and prevention of nuisances and hazards, and the provision of adequate light, air, and convenient access to property, the assurance of compatibility of land uses which are either adjacent or in proximity to each other, the orderly development of all lands within the township as is appropriate to its appropriate use, and the most appropriate use of land to facilitate and provide adequate public and private improvements. Per section 2707.07, unless a deviation from development standards is specifically approved as a divergence, the same shall be complied with. Divergence from section 1203.01 will allow rezoning to PCD on a parcel that is under the minimum 5 acres and not adjacent to another parcel zone PCD. Okay, and the finding is that that is correct.
Well, I guess for the finding is your opinion of how that requested divergence,
Applies to the
does it promote or
criteria.
not have an adverse impact on items A through F that you read?
Yeah. I mean, I think the assurance of the compatibility of land uses which are either adjacent or in proximity to each other. I mean, I would see that as one. Now, granted, the argument could be made that you have residential to one side, but you have businesses to the other side. But I think the intent, and it's been indicated through the comprehensive plan and through the 12 years that I've been involved, that area along Maxtown Road is pretty much targeted and planned for commercial development. Any other thoughts or questions on that?
No, I would agree.
Which number or letter?
D.
D, okay, yep.
Diversions from section 1203.03.A and 1203.03B to reduce the 75-foot green strip and screening setback from adjacent residential lot lines. I mean, you know, that's a tough one. Again, part of it is being driven by Westerville, but it would still not meet the 75-foot requirement. It's the size of the lot that's there. It's just the physical nature of the lot. We are able to do the best we can. I mean, I think the orderly development of all lands within the township to its appropriate use, E, would pretty much, you know, fall into that. I mean, it's not ideal, granted, but I don't believe that it is causing any significant harm by making the divergence to what is being proposed.
I might also add F onto that.
I thought that's what he said.
Oh, I thought
Was
you
the
said
most-
E.
I said E.
You
yeah.
said E, okay.
And F, that would probably work as well. Most appropriate use of land to facilitate and provide adequate public and private improvements. I mean, so. Diversions from section 1203.09 to reduce the 75-foot parking lot setback from the street right-of-ways. I think that falls under the same issue, E and F. It's not ideal. That's why we have divergence. I don't see it creating a major problem simply because of the type of property it is and the location. Diversions from section 1208.01 to reduce the 100-foot building setback from any district boundary line and street right-of-way. I think, again, we find that regardless of what type of development goes in there, there could be issues relative to that particular requirement. And, I mean, I think this plan is at least proposing something that is taking into account some of the concerns expressed by neighbors. I think it is trying to do the best they can with what they have to work with on the property as far as the buffering, setbacks. Fortunately, we don't have to have a pond. We're not going to have a pond there. We're going to have a depression area, which may even be changed in the final development plan. So, any other thoughts relative to those issues?
What's your finding for 4? Is it E and F? Are you doing E and F?
Yeah, I'm doing ENF
Yeah.
on 4 as well. I mean, ideally, it would have been great to have had the next door neighbor buy that parcel and include it in theirs and have another development, but that's not it. You know, you are taking the risk and you purchase the property and you're going through the process. So, you know, unfortunately, we always don't get to deal with absolutes in this situation. So, let me see here. Just take a moment. Any other questions, comments? I just want to make sure I don't have any other notes here. I don't think so. Are you part of the development? Okay, I just wanted to make sure anything. Pure finance. Oh, okay, all right, understood. Yeah, finance, that's kind of important too. All right, well, at this time, I'm going to move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval and thus approve with the modifications, the zoning map amendment, AKA rezoning requested by Maxtown Road 169 LLC, which seeks to rezone approximately 0.862 acres located at parcel number 31734105003000 from rural residential RR to planned commercial district PCD. As further described, detailed and illustrated in the materials of the subject application, zoning ZC case number 2021-03, also known as Jc Manny, and furthermore incorporating exhibits A through M. In accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, this motion to approve the rezoning request, which is subject to referendum, will go into effect 30 days after today, December 18th, 2021. It's November.
30 days.
30 days will be December 18th, 2021, excuse me, and is based on the following findings of fact and conclusion. Said amendment is found to be consistent with Genoa Township Comprehensive Plan pursuant to Section 108 of the Genoa Township Zoning Resolution. Said amendment is found, so
You don't need to do that.
right, we don't need to do the second one. The deviations, Joe, that is included in how? Because it is not in compliance, not consistent with the comp plan.
If you wish, you can incorporate the requested divergences into that
Right,
motion.
we
We
will.
specify them further in the second scripted motion for the preliminary development plan,
But
but
that's for the development plan. This is just for the rezoning.
yes, but it may not be a bad idea to cite the, if you want to cite specifically the divergence for the less than 5 acres standard in here, that we probably should have actually scripted that out. So it's clear that when you're granting the rezoning, you're authorizing the less than 5 acres.
Okay, so let me back up. Then I will amend that to say, said amendment is found to not be consistent with Genoa Township Comprehensive Plan contrary to Section 108 of Genoa Township Zoning Resolution. However, deviation from the plan is warranted due to the facts that identified any change in circumstances the plan was adopted and or provided rationale that supports the conflicting elements of the amendments. That being the divergence from section 1203.01 to allow rezoning to PCD on a parcel that is under the minimum, the 5-acre minimum, and not subject to another parcel zone PCD. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I would like, I think, in all fairness to everyone, and I do believe you had a individual involved in this project that was the chairman, is the chairman of the zoning commission.
Oh.
Yeah, Mark Antonetts,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And Mark Antonetts did abstain from any vote or any discussion
He wasn't here.
through the zoning commission process. Okay.
Correct.
He will potentially be involved going forward. And just wanting to make you aware of that situation. So how you deal with that, it'll have to be dealt with one way or the other. I do want to ask Trustee Vaughn her comfort level in voting on this issue relative to your
I'm fine.
relationship with an endorsement, actually, of Mark Antonetts.
Yes, I have not contacted him nor discussed this issue with him on purpose.
Okay.
But thank you for asking.
Well, I think we have to get it out on the air, because, I mean, there is a flyer
Yeah.
where you did endorse as a trustee.
And I believe the last time that you called me out on this, I, after the fact, talked to the prosecutor's office. And at that time, even though I did abstain from the vote, there was no conflict of interest for me.
Okay.
So yes, I supported Mark during the campaign, but this has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
And I have not discussed any of this content with him ever.
Okay, all right. And again, there is a flyer of that with Mark on it, with Sands Decker on this as well. So again, I'm not saying it's an issue. You have your right to vote. You have your right to do what you want. I just want to make sure everything is out in the open. We've had
Well-
issues with zoning in the past,
Right.
and I just want to
And
make
to
sure
say
that everyone's
that,
clear.
when we hired Stan Decker, I didn't know he was running for anything.
Right.
to be
No, I
quite
understand.
honest with you. I was as surprised as everybody else, so it wasn't like futuristically, I saw something coming, because I didn't see it coming.
And I appreciate the fact, and I mean, obviously, he would have had to abstain from any discussion, which he did.
Right,
So
right.
from that standpoint, there's no issue. So,
Record,
Yeah.
I don't know the applicant. I've never met the applicant. I've never spoken to the applicant before tonight, so
okay,
I have no dog in this fight besides representing the township.
okay, very good. Roll call.
Roll call, Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Yes. Motion carries.
Very good.
For the rezoning, now we get to go to the vote. See if I can muddle through that one, too. All right, I will move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval, and thus approve with or without modifications a preliminary development plan incorporated within the subject zoning map amendment proposed by Maxtown Road 169 LLC, contingent upon the successful adoption of said zoning map amendment. The proposed plan seeks to construct an approximately 5,000 square foot commercial building on approximately 0.862 acres, located at parcel number 3173-4105003000, now zoned Planned Commercial District, PCD, as further described, detailed, and illustrated in the materials of the subject application, ZC case number 2021-03, also known as Jc Manny. This motion of approval is preliminary in nature and shall still require submission and approval of a final development plan application, shall be subject to sections 2704.18 through 2704.23 of the zoning resolution, and shall incorporate exhibits A through M, as well as any commitments made by the applicant during this hearing, including, which we have the commitments made relative to the fencing, relative to screening, relative to hours of operation, parking,
Tree replacement?
tree replacements, noise, hours of operation, I think I said that, and addressing the wastewater issue, whether that's on-site or whether it's off-site, which will be done at the time of the final development plan. I further move to approve divergences as they relate to the preliminary development plan from the following sections of the Genoa Township zoning resolution. Divergence from section 1203.03.A and 1203.03B to reduce the 75-foot green strip and screening setback from adjacent residential lot lines. A divergence from section 1203.09 to reduce the 75-foot parking lot setback from the street right-of-way. And a divergence from section 1208.01 to reduce the 100-foot building setback from any district boundary line and street right-of-way. This motion to approve the preliminary development plan, which is not subject to referendum, is based on the following findings of fact and conclusions. That the assurance of the compatibility of land uses which are either adjacent or in proximity to each other, the orderly development of all lands within the township to its appropriate use, and the most appropriate use of land to facilitate and provide adequate public and private improvements. Is there a second?
Second?
Made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call. Oh, go ahead.
Is it a belt and suspenders thing to also include the divergence for less than 5 acres in this one, as well as in the rezoning?
I would recommend it just as, yeah,
Okay.
it's a belt and
Okay.
suspenders.
So perhaps amend?
I'll amend to, since we did include it in the first one, I just chose not to, but we will go ahead and include that. A divergence from section 1203.01 to allow rezoning to PCD on a parcel that is under the 5-acre minimum and not adjacent to another parcel zone PCD.
And I will second that.
Second that. Okay. Further discussion? Roll call?
Roll call, Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Yes, motion carries. So we have approved the preliminary development plan as well as the rezoning of that parcel. Let me see. Any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, I will move to adjourn this meeting at 8:12 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, discussion? Roll call.
Roll call, Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Yes, motion carries. And I will announce that the hearing is closed at 8:12 p.m.